Good day. Welcome to another edition of Ibima Mungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. Before I continue, I urge you to please press the like button. And if you're new to my show, I also urge you to subscribe. In November of 2013, Ukrainian President then, Viktor Yanukovych, faced a very dire situation. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. He had to make a choice. He had to make a choice between joining the Western European Union or keeping Ukraine within the orbit of Russia. He had already started accession talks to join the EU, but the conditions put on Ukraine by the EU, he found a little bit onerous. So what did he do? He stopped accession talks. He slowed down the talks to join the EU. On November 21st of 2013, protests broke out in Kiev. That protest, following his stoppage of the accession talks, led to what was later on called the Maidan Square Revolution, one of those color revolutions that we got to know within that region. And ultimately, it led to eventually the fall of the Yanukovych government. A lot has happened between that time and now. The fall of Yanukovych government brought in some serious political upheavals, but the people who took over in Ukraine tended to want to press on with the EU, and swiftly, Crimea was annexed by the Russians. Not too long, the people in the eastern part of Ukraine, the Luhansk and the Donetsk regions, declared their independence, and they decided to leave Ukraine. Since that revolution, Ukraine has been plunged into crisis. There's been two attempts to try and stop this crisis. There was the Minsk I agreement and the Minsk II agreement, but both agreements didn't help Ukraine. The Maidan Square crisis is today being remembered because it was a day that really shaped modern day Ukraine as we know it. It was a day that sparked the protest that we now see that ultimately has led to another day of hard decisions by another Ukrainian president on this very day, November 21st, 2025. Since that time, Ukraine has gone through crisis. It has lost Crimea. It has lost territories in Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson. It has lost a lot of human beings to the war, but it has also lost a lot of people to immigration. So these are not good times for Ukraine. And you will wonder, what did Ukraine get out of this, their aspiration? 11 years now, or 12 years now, their aspiration to join the West. It's been an ongoing one. Now, President Zelensky is being forced to make a choice. In fact, he says that he's being forced to either lose the dignity of the Ukrainian people or to lose a friend, a big supporter, a powerful supporter in the form of the United States of America. It's a very strong choice that he's being forced to make. So one president lost his presidency because he had a big choice to make, and he chose neutrality, actually. That was what Viktor Yanukovych chose. He chose not to make that choice. He chose to be neutral. Some people didn't want him to be neutral. They pushed him out. Now, President Zelensky is being forced to make a choice for peace. We are still in the early days and early phases of this move towards peace. But unlike other previous attempts to bring peace to Ukraine, President Zelensky recognizes the heavy weight on him. Every single thing has shifted. Every single calculus leading into this moment has changed. The Russians are pressing on with their special military operation. They already have seized significant territory and they are seizing more. And it is just not the fact that they are seizing more that is the problem. It's the fact that the pace at which they are seizing territories in the east, in Donetsk, the remaining part of Donetsk and the remaining territories in Luhansk, it has accelerated. They are also seizing territories in Zaporizhia and seizing territories all across in Volchansk and in Sumy. As if that is not bad enough, Zelensky's government is being racked by corruption investigations that has undermined his integrity, undermined the government, and made 2 of his ministers to resign. He is also coming face to face with the realization that despite all the bolster, the Europeans just don't seem to have enough money to support him and help the Ukrainian cause. And this is at a time also that the Americans have stepped away from the war. President Trump has outsourced the Ukraine support for Ukraine, both military and political and financial support for Ukraine. He has outsourced it to the Europeans. Meanwhile, the Russians have stepped up their attack on the energy infrastructure. Because they all live in that region, they tend to forget that the winters are cold. Technology has made the winter not to be as cold as it is. It's tolerable. But the Russians are trying to destroy all the strands of technology and advancement that makes the winter tolerable within that region. Gas plants and energy plants are being destroyed. Ukraine is not in a very good place. Yesterday, we got to learn about President Trump's 28-point agenda, and that agenda is now out there. Everybody has seen it. And it was very pointedly stated to the Ukrainians that they should make some hard choices. It was there. They won't join NATO. They will reduce their military. They will let go of the territories that the Russians have taken. They will freeze the territories in Zaporizhia and Kherson. The list goes on. It was a long list. And today, Zelensky, realizing that this is a moment in history, put out a statement. He put out a statement for his people to see, and that statement, ultimately the statements had this to say. This is what came out of that statement. Every nation faces moments requiring honest, calm truth. This is such a moment for Ukraine. Ukraine is under immense pressure and may soon face a painful choice, loss of dignity or loss of key partner, harsh conditions or unacceptable concessions. Ukraine will work constructively with the US and partners, seeking solutions without giving the enemy grounds to claim Ukraine opposes peace or diplomacy. Ukraine aims to end the war without sacrificing itself, Europe, or global peace. Europe and the world must stand with Ukraine, with its people, and with the principle of dignity and freedom. Ukraine is not having a good time. And as all of this is happening, of course, we are getting to see the responses of Ukraine supporters. Ukraine supporters are very much in support of trying to get a fair deal for Ukraine. A peace, a true and just peace, whatever that means. It's a very subjective thing. So instantly we saw all the countries of Europe call Zelensky and tell him that they are with him in solidarity. It is very clear that Zelensky has everybody in his corner. I have Zelensky's page here, and these are all the people who reached out to Zelensky. We have here, thank you, Dan Cosa, from the President of Romania. We have also the Prime Minister of Latvia. We have the Prime Minister of Sweden. Of course, Ursula von der Leyen, Anthony Costa, the President of the EU, European Council, and we also have the Prime Minister of Finland. We have the Prime Minister of the President of Czech Republic, and the Prime Minister of Poland, of course. And Lithuania sent a delegation, their National Defense, Minister of National Defense of Lithuania. They are not lacking support. A lot of people have shown solidarity with President Zelensky. But nevertheless, as the Europeans are saying, and Chancellor Merz says Ukraine can count on us together with Macron and Starmer. We have reaffirmed our full support for Zelensky. We welcome U.S. commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, but the current contact line must remain the foundation for any negotiations. As regards to the president of Poland, Norowski, he said each and every peace plan aimed at ending the war in Ukraine started with the Russian Federation must be accepted in Kiev. It is Ukraine that has fallen victim to Putin's criminal aggression. And it is Ukrainians that with the support of United States and EU countries who must have the decisive voice in peace. The list goes on and on. And in order to get a clearer sense of where America is, President Zelensky actually tried to call President Trump, but he didn't get to talk with President Trump. Rather, he got to talk with Vice President J.D. Vance, and Vice President J.D. Vance, sympathetic as he could be, just let him know that America is expecting that he will sign a peace deal before Thanksgiving. The U.S. wants to settle this before Thanksgiving. I think that's towards November 27th or December 3rd. When President Trump was made aware about the reactions of President Zelensky, this is what he had to say.
Don't forget, I inherited this war. This war never would have.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal proposal.
Doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of tenuous about it.
He'll have to like it. And if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that
Well, at some point, he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. This war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yes, so President Trump is saying that he inherited the war and it should have made a deal. Many people feel that, yes, one, if he had made that deal that Boris Johnson scuttled in April of 2022, he would have had all the 4 oblasts still with him. But he didn't make that deal. If he had made the deal later on, there was one that after the very good successes of the Ukrainians, the general commander of the U.S. forces, General Maidan, I think, he said that Ukraine should take that as a high water mark and settle with the Russians. He didn't. Since then, Ukraine has lost quite a lot of people. No matter the figures, it says between 700,000 to 1.7 million soldiers have been lost. They've also lost quite a lot of people to immigration, about 10 million people. Many are children and women, but recently young men also have joined that number. But it's their economy that has been destroyed. Now they're a beggarly nation, mendicant shops and going around begging for support to be able to plug gaps in their budget. This is the reality they find themselves in. And it's not a good one in any form or shape or manner. The Ukrainians are really in a bad way, and it is at this point also that the Russians are moving forward. Anyway, while the Ukrainians are delaying about mulling over this particular thing, the Russian president is not being nice in any form or manner.
As I said times before, peaceful talks. We are ready to resolve the issues in a peaceful manner. This, however, requires detailed discussion of all the details of the plan that is being proposed. We are ready for that. If Kiev doesn't want to discuss President Trump's propositions, if they refuse to do that, they and the European warmongers must realize that the events in Kupiansk will repeat inevitably in other key sections of the front line. Maybe not as quick as we would like it, but inevitably they will repeat.
Yes, if they don't take this peace offer on the table, he had practically said we accept it, but I think the move about accepting it, from my own conjecture, is to put the Ukrainians in a bad position. The whole idea has been that yes, we accept it. There's a certainty that Russia will accept, with the full knowledge that Ukraine will not accept, because Ukraine is being urged by our European partners not to accept the deal. This war has come this far because of the Europeans. Europeans have been very stringent in saying they will support Ukraine, but mainly they give political and diplomatic support to Ukraine. But the one country that matters the most, that give Ukraine military support, intelligence that is very critical to their survival, and also financial support, is mainly America. And Donald Trump has decided not to do that anymore. Kupiansk has been taken by the Russians, and that's what he's trying to say. Putin was saying that Kupiansk has been taken, and that it was taken well over 2 weeks ago. He actually said so. He said, while the Zelensky was saying that only 32 soldiers Russian soldiers were in Kupiansk about 2 weeks ago, the city had already been taken by the Russians. We get to know more about what's going on in the front when we see scenes like this, where the Russian soldiers are now walking around in Pokrovsk. This is Russian soldiers moving around in Pokrovsk and unimpeded, undisturbed. They are settling in, they're getting in and digging in deep. And in fact, today I got to see them shooting a lot of artillery from Pokrovsk, from their strongholds now that they have, into the northwestern part of Pokrovsk. They have embedded themselves, but they will make Pokrovsk a garrison, and they will turn it into a place from which they will continue their movement inside Donbass, the remaining part of Donetsk. Today also we got this video of Russians and in Pokrovsk, on a road where we now see a lot of Ukrainians taking prisoners. They continue, they control that whole territory completely. So the battle is not going on well for the Ukrainians. Yesterday when President Putin was fully dressed, he was dressed in the military uniforms. He met with General Gerasimov and the whole team that commanded the west and the southern parts of command of the operations there. And we got then that the Russians had liberated Kupiansk, 80%, completely liberated Kupiansk. They have 80% of Volchansk and 70% of Pokrovsk, which is what the General Staff, Gerasimov, said. And then he said, in Kupiansk, 15 battalions of the armed forces of Ukraine are blocked. We will give them opportunity to lay down their arms and surrender. If not, we'll destroy them. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense also added that Russian troops have liberated 16 communities, including they liberated 16 communities between the 15th and 21st in the special military operations. That's a lot. We were used to seeing the Russians take 1 month, 2 months to try and get around all the fortifications in one particular community, but now they are moving at a pace that is very blistering and very frightening. In Sumy district, reports of fighting in the forest belts of Sumy near Adivka. A combined fire strike destroyed another assault group of the armed forces of Ukraine. The armed forces of Ukraine is under a lot of stress. But if it is not even the fact that they are under the stress, it's the propaganda world. It's very demoralizing. We see a lot of drone strikes. We see a lot of strikes on weaponry, on machinery, but we also see strikes on people. We see drone attacks. We see destruction of soldiers. We see execution of soldiers captured in real time. It's very harrowing. And as they send it out and put it out there, obviously their whole intent is propaganda, is to demoralize the Ukrainians. And it may just be that it is working, because now we see how the Ukrainians are losing the fight. Maybe not because of the fact that they don't want to fight, but their morale is less than it used to be. And in the face of all of this, their situation is not known. There's a corruption scandal that is making them feel like, why are we doing this? Anyway, in Civex, we heard that Yam Pill has fallen, and that has exposed Civex completely to being overrun. So already we know that Civex, the Russians have entered the southeastern part of Civex, and even they are now in the central part of Civex to a large extent. So that's the Russian situation. It's this is decision time for Zelensky. The Ukrainians and the Russians are insisting they will continue. They are not stopping, and it is that particular pressure they are putting on the Ukrainians that is a pressure point, that is forcing a decision on the part of Zelensky. Trump is also putting his own pressure, and despite all the lullaby and the assurances of the Europeans, they can't help the Ukrainians to plug their capital. One of the key points of the peace deal is that Ukraine will get to have $100 billion from the frozen Russian assets to use for their redevelopment. And that may be something that they really need now. They are really not in a good financial position. And that may be one of the things that may encourage them to want to take this position. I want to talk a little bit about my country, Nigeria. There has been an upsurge of brigandage, criminality, and attacks by Islamists, and you will call them Islamists because that's what they really are. They come from the Sahel region, and that region is now troubled. Anytime there's such a flare-up, you would want to think that it may have something to do with political upheaval in one of the neighboring countries around Nigeria. We see serious flare-ups being correlated. There's a direct correlation between flare-ups in countries like Chad during the Chadian War and brigandage in northern Nigeria, state of Maiduguri. The same too now. The Sudanese problem is a big problem, and we really don't know. I can't put a finger on it, and if the Sudanese problem has started to lead to spillovers that are affecting other countries. I don't know the full details of attack on Chad, attack on Niger Republic, but I do know that the attacks on Nigeria have stepped up. And it is not just the fact that the attacks on Nigeria have stepped up, it's the geographical spread from northwestern Nigeria, which is Sokoto, Zamfara, and Kebbi, to the traditional hotspots in northeastern Nigeria, which is Maiduguri, and the states are surrounding Maiduguri. So now we get to hear about kidnap of students, 25 girls from one school. We also get to hear about the ambush and killing of a Nigerian contingent of soldiers, including a brigadier. But it is the fact that somehow all these killings have been propagandized, and some particular people, one group of people, have taken this opportunity to convince some members of the US Congress that there's killing, genocide of Christians in Nigeria that has been the big geopolitical story for a while, because President Trump took that particular story and decided that he was going to intervene in Nigeria if something was not done. Well, something is being done finally. Unfortunately for Nigeria, they were hoping that they would attend the G20 summit and meet with President Trump if he attended, but he obviously is not attending. So the National Security Advisor of Nigeria met with Pete Hegseth today, the Secretary of War, who has been instructed to make up plans on how they are going to have an operation in Nigeria. The National Security Advisor is Nehru Ribadu, and he came to Washington, D.C. to try and put the point to the Americans that we have a situation with brigandage. This situation has been generational. It's very complex. And this complexity is now being discussed in no less a place than the American Congress. I think Congress is a committee. At the committee level, there's been a lot of discussions about what's going on in Nigeria, because President Trump requested it, and President Trump threatened that he was going to do a military operation. And it has raised alarm. The lobbyists, obviously there may be Nigerian lobbyists who are also intervening, and they are now telling the American government that we have a problem. This problem has been persisting for over a long time. I have always said that this problem has a direct relationship, direct, not indirect, not inverse, not any other statistical correlationship. The relationship is directly a consequence of President Obama's ill-fated attack on Libya in 2011, I think 2011, or maybe some other time. And that attack on Libya really destroyed Libya. Libya, unfortunately, had very large cache of arms, very large. And that arms frittered into the into the black market, got into the hands of militants, and now Al-Qaeda of the Sahel, and so many groups, towering groups, and now have arms, and they became a big problem to the governments of the Sahel. It is for that reason that, one, the governments felt that the country that was supposed to give them protection, because they had a treaty agreement for that kind of protection, which was France, they felt France was not doing enough. So what did they do? They had a problem with France, and they kicked France out. But before they kicked France out, the countries felt, the militaries in those countries felt that they needed to step in and save the populace, and they all fell to coups, military coups. So democracy has been lost in those countries. And the people who were doing all the killing, we should remind you, were killing Muslims in those countries, because those countries are predominantly Muslim countries. Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger Republic, they all kicked out France, and they brought in the Wagner group, Prigozhin's group, to come and try and help them. Ultimately, the Wagner group has gone to try and help the Russian cause, but Russia has now taken over security for these countries. And I saw a video of a Russian operation against these militants in Mali and in Niger and all of that place. So the geopolitics of the Sahel has changed. France has been booted out in even Central African Republic, because this is how far and extensive this problem that Obama left for Africa has been. And beyond that also, the most important one is that they've always had a farmer/herders problem in Nigeria, because there's a dichotomy between the communities that take care of animal husbandry and the communities that take care of that do farming. The traditional farming have problems with the itinerant, nomadic Fulani herdsmen. 10 years ago, the Fulani herdsmen used to come around with sticks. Sticks is what we know them with now. But thanks to all the arms available in northern part of Nigeria, Fulani herdsmen now protect their cows with machine guns and bazookas. If you kill any of their cows, they will attack your community. No matter whether it is a Christian community or a Muslim community, they will attack your community and destroy you. Anyway, the Nigerian government is now waiting for Peter Hegseth to put a coalition of the willing or unwilling and come and bomb Nigeria. There's a lot of jokes and memes over internet about this particular problem. That whole region is bad now. I think the flare-up in Sudan may have something to do with it. A lot of people have been displaced in Darfur. There's still a lot of arms there. The RSF is having successes in that part of Darfur, and it may just be one of the reasons why this brigandage has really been exacerbated. Whatever the reason, the Nigerian government is trying to create clarity to the American government regarding this, and I think it is a good thing. Anyway, this is where I end my video for today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you have any views regarding the opinions I just expressed, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Until my next video, you have a good day.